Good afternoon. This is the last session. I managed to manage 3/4 of an hour overrun yesterday and had the worst barb about it. Someone came and said, "You must finish, the white wine is getting warm." We're going to try and be away by 5:15 latest. No presentations here. This is going to be a very engaging conversation between the people on the stage and then hopefully you. It's about the frameworks for successful place branding, because often we find as practitioners, whether in the public or the private sector, we're going into something that's already got roots, it's got structures, it might be set in stone, and we have to do the best with it. Sometimes we've got the freedom to create something completely new. We are going to hear from people who operate at the level of the city, someone who operates at the level of a region, and someone who operates at the level of a country. Joanna from Connect Ireland has the challenge of connecting an entire country and dealing with its messaging. Connie is putting together an entire region, a complex region, to have a consistent brand, if you like. And Klaus is the CEO of Copenhagen Capacity, and as anyone who's ever visited Copenhagen will know, it's a fantastic place. It's doing great work on its environment and sustainability. You go into the coffee shops and the bars, and there's great argument, let's call it positively, discussion about it. So all three of these people have long-in-the-tooth experience of making structures work. And in preparation for today, we agreed a number of questions which they're going to answer for us, and we'll see how the time goes, and if there's time, we'll come back to you guys. The first one is really, what are the advantages of being an independent organization, and how have you built relationships with key government stakeholders and others to make your situation work? So in any order.
Want to go first? Should I? I'll start then. We are an independent organization here, and I think one of the advantages that we have in that is there's definitely a great pressure on city branding from the politicians that surrounds us. That also goes maybe for the civil servants, but it also goes from the industries, from the universities, who all wants to have a stake or a say in how you actually organize these things here. And I believe being independent, you might be better suited to balance these things against each other here, as opposed to if I was hired as a civil servant in the city of Copenhagen here, I would probably place my bets on the politicians directly above me. So in that regard, maybe we stand a bit of chance of actually balancing the different actors in the region.
I think probably from our perspective, it was slightly different from the Irish perspective in that we're an independent organisation, Connect Ireland, but we work with government, and we started from a policy perspective delivering the government's Action Plan for Jobs initiative was what it was called, Succeed in Ireland initiative. And we started, I suppose, in a pioneering space in that the programme was absolutely globally unique. So we got to write our own template in a way, and for that we have lots of scars in our back, and we learned a lot of things along the journey. But really what we wanted to do was to energise the Irish, whether they be at home or abroad, or people that had a positive affinity towards Ireland or that felt that sort of engagement with Ireland, to do something positive. And the why piece for us was because 4 years ago, when we were born, almost 4 years ago, and we were part of something called the Global Irish Forum. I know you'd all be very well aware of the challenges that Ireland had at that time, in that I think we had 3 months left to pay the public sector. We were at economic Armageddon at that point. That was our crucible. That was the thing that brought us together. So I was interested to hear about some of the other crucibles that other speakers have spoken about earlier on. So that was the commonality that was there, that we were experiencing the brink of disaster as a country, and we'd never before experienced that. And we had some things going on from an Irish perspective that were positive. We spoke English, thank you very much. We were part of the Eurozone, and we actually had a very pro-business environment, and we had a lot of multinationals that had chosen Ireland as their destination because because yes, they had talent, yes, the tax was great, all of that, but actually it was kind of a nice place to live, kind of a nice place to work. So it started with that sort of overall concept was, well, if it's good enough for LinkedIn and PayPal and Google and on and on and on, well, why wouldn't it be good enough for the SME sector? Why don't we ask internationalising business in that group, the smaller numbers, why don't they choose Ireland? But how would we ever get the leads? Will we get them through diaspora? And so the advantage from our perspective of being private sector was we could be really innovative. We could create things that hadn't been done before. And we had many campaigns and still have. We like that creativity. We move fairly quickly, I hope. And we did things wrong and lots right as well. So that was our, there's challenges, I guess, working with government, but sometimes they rein you in too. So your ambition as a private sector company, sometimes that needs to be moderated. The language needs to be moderated to make sure that we're all on message.
Well, if you look at the fact that we want to build the brand, the Limburg brand, for you who don't know Limburg yet, we still have some work to do. It's the southern part of the Netherlands, in between Belgium and Germany, which really adds value because we are brilliant in crossing border so far for this pitch. But what is key in that is that we say, okay, internationally, we are not well known yet, so it's really important that we have a very long-term branding strategy. And if you are kind of independent and you have a possibility to work long-term, this gives you an opportunity to focus and to really work together with all kinds of partners, because we are not depending on financial gifts of certain organizations that have specific needs. So we can really work on a more strategic level to brand on a long-term, the reputation of the region.
Great. And when you were all talking earlier in preparation for the conference, you identified some of the challenges in effecting coordination with other bodies, in particular the longer established tourism guys and gals who think, you know, we've been around for a long time and we know what this is about, and this is about tourism, but actually, as we know, place branding is about more than that. What's been your experience of building a positive relationship with people like that? Truth, please.
Well, I can start by being very truthful and saying that this is our third time around trying to build or rebuild the Copenhagen brand. We failed miserable the first two times. You might want to ask the organizers why they put me up here on stage, but if it wasn't, at least then maybe because we tried to learn. We tried to learn from our experiences, right? But the thing was, the first time, what we realized, 15 years ago, was that Copenhagen is actually a too small city to really brand and drive, investments to. If you only look at the municipality itself, it's less than 600,000 people here. So we wanted to have more critical mass. So we wanted to expand out and say, okay, we're talking about, a greater area of Copenhagen here. And we even went so far as we went to Sweden, even the southern part of Sweden here. And the first challenge was, what name should we then choose? And because it's really difficult to pick these things, they're very emotional, we chose, the name of the small strait running between Zealand, the Danish part and the Swedish part here. That strait is known if you live in Copenhagen or if you live in Malmö. If you live outside these cities, you have never heard about them. Øresund, you know about it. I asked people about that yesterday if they've ever heard about the Øresund region, and one of them lied and said yes, and that was you. No, but coming back to your question here, the thing is, once you start to expand and once you want to gain more critical mass, you also move into a much more complex situations here, because we're now trying today to balance 79 different municipalities spanning 3 different regions in 2 countries. That's massively complex if you want to try to have all these mayors, all the different organizations, all the different universities, if you really want to get them aligned behind, a brand that in its essence has to be very, very small and very, very targeted, carrying maybe just a few values and a small story here. It's massively complex, and it takes a lot of effort in terms of communication, in terms of workshops, in terms of trying to include people and then not include them, because if you want to include everything here, then you'll never achieve anything here, right? But really being out there with the people there and spending a massive amount of time out there has been crucial for us.
Okay. Any particular tips that really worked for you?
One more thing in our case, and if you're dealing with a large number of stakeholders here, is to try to get in place what we have now, like a set of board of directors. We could call them a board of mayors, but nevertheless, at least a smaller unit who would direct your overall activities here. Because if you are to take in, deal with all these different stakeholders on every matter that you put out there, it's going to be impossible. We would die in that here. So now we have a smaller body in place that we play ball with.
Okay.
And that has been important.
I think what is important is to really think from an added value point of view. It is our experience is that it doesn't work just to say you should now work with us. I mean, if you normally try to sell something, then you also have to show how this product adds value. So that's the way we try to work. We try to kind of sit next to the other organization and try to think, what is your strategy? What is your objective? And then we try to see if we can find a strategic level where you can combine the objective of your region and the USP of your region and link it to the needs, so to say, of the organization.
I know a little bit about your work and doing, because Robert tells me quite a bit about the region. Have you had to make some tough compromises and choices in those relationships along the way to get stuff to work?
Yeah, sure. We started only 2 years ago. So there you find a situation that from a strategic point of view, a government says, okay, this is the way forward. We're going to subsidize you so you don't have to go for money. So in theory, you would say everybody is opening the doors and say, hi, please come in and we love to have you here. But as a matter of fact, it doesn't work like that because people say, so why should I work with you? So there, from moment, second point is that you just, as I said, have to discuss and find how you can add your value. And I think in the end that now working every day is we find more and more how to deal with that. And yes, you have tough fights all the time, but in the end you have to overcome all these discussions. And
we don't come into this field for a quiet life. What have been the challenges you've faced?
I'm so interested to hear both comments, actually. Just, I suppose, from the outset, the simple ask was really important to us. So it's communicating a very complex message. The message is a message of foreign direct investment, ultimately. And that's not really something that you take off in bite sizes. It's not for the great unwashed. It's actually quite a complex area. And we were reaching out in a blanket way to everybody, really everybody. It wasn't a CEO, CFO, it was from grassroots up. And so to get that simple ask right, and that simple ask for us was, do you know an expanding company? If you don't, that's okay. Maybe you know someone living or working abroad who might likely be in a company, who might be likely to expand, but do you know an expanding company? And then how we brought people along, we learned along the journey, how we brought them, and it's going back to something that you're referring to there. For our stakeholders, we have many stakeholders in Connect Ireland. Our national airline, Aer Lingus, is a stakeholder, Ryanair is a stakeholder, IRFU is a stakeholder, FAI is a stakeholder, our GAA is a stakeholder, on and on and on. And I think how we did that was that those stakeholders recognised themselves in our brand, that we reflected their passion for their Ireland, rather than us forcing our opinion of. In the beginning, for example, we used a frame, we talked about this at our recent telephone conversation, a kind of a Help Ireland frame. And we didn't realise, of course, at the time that help anything is pejorative, right? Nobody wants to help anything. This isn't a charity. We have a really great message we want to get out there. We just want you to help us share it. So we worked on our language, and our language now, I hope, reflects the ambition of the people who invest in us, and I don't mean that in a resourcing way. If you go down the escalator in Dublin Airport, Terminal 2, you'll be met with a 5-metre square digital wall of loads of people that are, prolific Irish people. They could be in sport, or they could be, Martin Sheehan is one, Saoirse Ronan is another, Michael Flatley is another. These kind of people that resonate. And that area, you couldn't buy that real estate, you just couldn't pay for it. But it's a gift to us from the Dublin Airport Authority. So we celebrate the Dublin Airport Authority. We celebrate Michael O'Leary. He doesn't have to. For Michael O'Leary to back a government programme for us is a really big deal, right? Because Michael doesn't back a whole lot. But So that's our message, is to listen, really listen. Somebody told me once that you have 2 ears and 1 mouth and you should use them exactly in that proportion. So if GAA want to bring players home, if we lost all of our kids between 18 and 25, 400,000 of them, by the way, we lost across the globe, we educated them, a totally lost generation. If they want to get them back, will you tell us what way you want us to deliver your message, and we'll do it that way. In the meantime, do you know an expanding company? That was kind of the simple ask.
Okay. Have you other two got examples of things that have turned around your messaging like that, to be able to access a piece of real estate or something that someone else gives you as a real opportunity to get your brand message across? Mm-hmm. Given you're under tight constraint, I know you've had lots of financial support, but none of us have enough money to do the job. Mm-hmm. So have you got examples of interesting innovation you could share with the audience?
One of the ways that we worked, for example, is that, of course, in fact, you're right. If you have a certain amount of money, it's key that everybody starts working on brand, on message, and that they also spread this message. So one of the developments we have in Limburg is that we have the areas of several campuses where people, students, companies, but also governmental institutions work together. And in the end, we have a lot of economic effort there and a lot of startups. They were looking for a new brand name, and Connect Limburg worked together from a conceptual point of view. And the only thing we wanted is that in their strategic message, in their USP, the Limburg USP was added as well. So what they did is they came up with the name Brightlands, and our USP is that we are a unique cross-border region, and so they added knowledge crossing borders. So what's happening now, and that's really brilliant, is that all the time that they introduce something, that they show something new, they say, this is the place where we cross border. This is the place where we share our knowledge cross border. And that's exactly what we want, because then they are, in fact, based on content, showing and proving that what we try to tell in our storytelling about the region is true, and that is not just logo or not just something we made up, but it's really happening.
So in a sense, your market is not just the people in the province of Limburg.
No, absolutely
it's
not.
the people in the other two countries as well.
Yeah, and even further.
And reading what you've been doing and looking at what you've got on the internet, you're not just crossing borders, you're actually crossing boundaries
of
thought and conception and place. Could you say a bit more about that?
Yeah, well, it's the fact that you cross border. It's sometimes you can think of across a border from a sector. So what you see is, for example, is that again these campuses they cross sectors, working in health and all the new developments that they find in the food sector. You can combine that and you can come up with complete new ideas, but they also literally, geographically cross these borders, and they go to Germany and to Belgium. And in fact, that's what we want to focus on, that we are not only the southern part of the Netherlands being very tiny, but that we have an enormous potential in Germany with 80 million people just across the border, and that we have at least 6 airports within 100 kilometers. We have many universities, and that's what we want to tell internationally, because in the end, of course, we want to have all these people come to invest and study and stay in Limburg, of course. Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
Very good. Do you have any examples like that as you're dealing with Malmö and the southern part of Sweden?
I have a bad example, actually.
Okay,
and I guess
fine.
those also
are
count for something,
yeah.
right? Because on our second time around trying to build a brand here, what we did was actually, then we have come back to the Copenhagen name, but we wanted to build at that time an organization, a branding organization, who should be responsible for carrying out all the activities. Meaning that we were going out to investors and companies and universities and asking them to pay money into that agency so that they could do the branding. And that failed. And I think that's the opposite of what you actually may be talking about here, because nowadays we are much more keen on trying to push the brand out to the different local stakeholders, universities, for example. Could we work with the universities to get them aligned around a common message about what is science in Copenhagen all about? and then allow them to go out there and use the brand by themselves, as much as they possibly can there, and set it free sometimes here. So we need to control parts of it here, but definitely set it free with other partners.
Okay.
Could be private companies also. I think that's a learning that we took
Right.
away.
I'm struck looking at what all of you do, but you have one characteristic in common. You are dependent on money. So what are the things you talk to the people who've got the money that you want to do good with before you actually get down to talking about the budgets? What are the kind of values and benefits you're selling? What are the deliverables you mention as part of your pitch to get that continuity of support and money? Because you don't work in isolation. We all work in that context. So what are the things that really worked for you, the persuasive arguments, the successes you've had?
We have given up trying to raise a large budget for building a brand and rather flipped it upside down and say we are now raising money to run campaigns. Because campaigns are easier to explain, why you're doing these things, what kind of challenges you're trying to solve. Do you want to attract more talent? Do you want to attract more tourists? Do you want to, whatever, the means are. So you can actually demonstrate and tell your investors what it is that you want to achieve here. We find that is an easier way for us to raise the funds that we need here. And the thing then is that you want to have all these campaigns tied together around a common brand, of course.
And our message was pretty compelling, I think, to the Irish government. We wanted to work with the Irish government. We had to make it work with Irish government and with the state agencies. So our model was slightly different, and we get paid on success only. So Connect Ireland's the finance model, a payment to Connect Ireland is only made after the moment that an employee signs a contract of employment. That triggers a payment to us. Almost half of that goes to the connector. It's a reward to the person who introduced the company to Ireland to ultimately set up. So absolutely no risk to the Irish state. And in fact, if a company comes in and sets up and they leave after a year, we indemnify the Irish state. So it's pretty compelling for the government to see this private sector company will pay for it. We'll do it all by ourselves. We'll mirror your messaging. We'll do something that hasn't been done before. We'll do an outreach we always talk about our diaspora. We always think we're so community-based, and we are, but we've never really spoken to them before. Why don't we try and have a chat with them and see what they think? And we found some accidental things on the back of that. First of all, we found that our diaspora wanted to talk to us, and they really were honoured by the fact that their country of origin remembered that they left and remembered and asked them what their opinion was. And so we had some interesting numbers, which I'll share with you really quickly. In the first year, we had an ambition for, I don't know what it was, 2,000 connectors. We thought that'd be great if we had 2,000 connectors. That's 2,000 people who were interested in introducing a company. In the first year, we had 4,500, so we were delighted. And then in the second year, we're just over the 3 years old now, with 6,500 connectors. So we're blown away by that. People are really liking that. In the third year, we had 26,000 connectors, and suddenly the trajectory of our connectors were gone. So right now, I think we have over 52,000 in 147 countries all over the globe, all just part of the club. I don't know a company right now, but I might in a little while. So yeah, the government were really interested in that model. And also, and I don't mind sharing this, I know you all have similar experiences. One of the things we didn't expect either was where these companies come in and they set up, and very often they're outside the urban centres, they're in small areas because there's smaller company numbers. The local minister gets to stand into the photograph of the job creation figure in Kinvara and County Galway on the west. I don't know why they like that, but they seem to like that a lot.
You mean a political minister or religious minister?
The political type were very engaged in the idea that this, and funny, again, because it was a human interest, because somebody introduced somebody, and we're really nosy, as you know, Irish people, we said, who did that? John did that. And how did he meet him? He met him on a golf course, he introduced the guy, and there's the minister, and it worked. And so, for example, we had a jobs announcement 2 weeks ago in a small area, Waterford, the very south of Dublin. It was 10 jobs over 3 years, and we got 600,000 Twitter impressions for 10 jobs.
Wow, very good.
Yeah, just to show you that sometimes, again, it's about reflecting other people's ambition.
Connie?
Yeah, because we are being subsidized, it's normally, so for the next 10 years, we will get this budget. But obviously, so the political organization needs to stay happy. So in the end, they must, again, it's about added value. They must have the feeling that, okay, so the objective is build this reputation internationally. And okay, so you get your money, but if we don't connect with other organizations, it's useless. So how we kind of get our money is that we don't ask this money from these third parties, as you know, but we ask for commitment. And this commitment means that they start working for us, with us, and we try to increase, of course, social media efforts, but nice events in line with Simon Anholt symbolic actions, that we really get the right content for a region. And normally this should make the wheel turning, that in the end, well, Limburg is better known internationally.
Right. In the previous discussion, you highlighted the importance of understanding the difference between place branding and place marketing, and indeed the relationship between the two. Could you, quite succinctly, because I'd like to make some opportunity for the floor to ask you questions, what do you see the relationship between place branding and place marketing is? What are the differences and what are the unifying things?
Well, for us, I mean, shortly the brand will constitute, you know, what are the underlying values and the core messages that you want to relay about the city or the region that you're in here. And the campaigns then would have a more operational target in terms of, you know, attracting or promoting or whatever you want to reach here. Those would be the campaigns, and they would have the specific targets, whereas the brand will more be the underlying.
Yeah, I agree, Klaus, actually the same. The brand is the emotion. For us, the brand was the emotional connection. And the campaign, the marketing prowess is about the actuality of that. And I suppose from just the previous speakers, I actually do believe that the economic impact has to be measured also. In our situation, a tangible output is a job, but it's very, very important, I think, if you're trying to encourage inward investment and funds, that you do measure and that you can deliver. This is exactly what we've achieved. Otherwise, you know, we can talk all day long, right? Show me the money.
Yeah, in fact, in our situation as being the branding organization, it's very obvious that we also have marketing organizations within the region, and it's a clear goal to make a connection that whenever they integrate the story of the Limburg region, you strengthen as well the brand of the region. So 1 on 1 is then 3 in the end. Yeah.
Perhaps I can throw that question over to the floor. Have we any contributions that distinctly come down on one side between the relationship with place branding and marketing? Are they very separate, or do you find you work together? If you're going to ask a question, say who you are, please, and don't speak for more than 30 seconds.
If anybody's still awake.
I could easily keep you longer from the wine, if you want. Okay, any other question? Okay.
Oh, okay. Oh gosh, I see a lot of Limburg, so let's see. You've learned a useful...
Want to take one of them, Connie?
Yeah, well, I think I've seen one, what's the difference in national identity in the branding, in engaging the community. Well, the interesting thing in the Netherlands is that although the Netherlands has a very strong brand image, there is not such a Connect Netherlands, so to say. So there is not an organization like Connect Ireland. So what you see in the Netherlands is that you have this brand for tourists, for example, for tourism. But on the highest level, I do understand that they have certain values that are absolutely in line with the values of Limburg. So if you then go down in the discussion with locals, they recognize themselves. And yeah, so I don't see there a big difference. Yeah.
Okay. Do you have any thoughts on those questions? Can you read them from there?
I can. I don't have that many comments on Limburg, though, but...
Okay. I'm conscious of time. This is awards, so there are going to be some very happy people in a couple of minutes' time. Others will get commiserations, but the point is these are great, great submissions. And I hope, as Claire said earlier, that next year we get a lot more submissions. But first of all, let me thank the panel for their insights and for you for coming along to the last session of the afternoon.
Thank you.